Hi, welcome to Smith and Grezzy. We've got a very, very special guest with us this week. It's the one and only, the legendary Dean Morley. Been a long-time friend of ours, and he's joining us all the way from Brisbane in Australia. Welcome, Dean.
Definitely.
How's life for you at the moment, Dean?
Oh, it's fantastic, mate. Yeah, it's we're just coming out of winter here, so it's getting warm, but it's switched overnight. Like it's 35 degrees today. It's like it's getting pretty warm. Got the aircon on now, so it's nice and cool. And we had a thing called Repertoire last night when there's a load of fireworks and stuff. And because we live right on the river in the centre of Brisbane, they have a flyby with jets and bombers and all sorts of fireworks going off, and it's a big celebration. We had a load of people over on the balcony and got stuck into it till about 3 this morning, so it's good.
Am I right in thinking you live on the harbour there?
It's not the harbour, but it's the Brisbane River, right? It's right in the CBD, and there's a brewery next door, and about 10 pubs on the way to work, so it's quite hard sometimes getting home. But it's a good spot. It's a good spot, and we don't have a car anymore because we don't drive anywhere. We walk everywhere now because we're right in the centre. So it works out quite well. It's good.
So, Dean, me and you, we first met in 1987, was it? 86, 87?
86, yeah, I remember it well.
So,
yesterday.
So, how did your banding career start?
Yeah, I started playing when I was about 11, and I ended up joining National Youth Band when I was 14. But I only had a single B-flat bass at the time from school, and then I ended up playing for Morris Motors down in Oxford, and my teacher at the time used to drive me down one night, and my dad would take us down the next. And it was quite enlightening, really, because I'd never played a double B-flat bass before, and so I went down there, and they got like a brand new Besson satin silver plate, and it was like absolute brand new, and it got a fourth valve. I didn't even know what the fourth valve did, so it was quite a surprise, and I got it out and I rested it on top of one of the old blue Sovereign cornet cases, so I could hold the thing, and let me take it home, and that was the start, really. From that day forward, I was doing like 3 hours a night every night. Just loved it. Got a little stand to put it on because I couldn't really play it very well without that. And but it was a great band, lovely people down at Morris Motors, and it was quite a famous band. It was part of the Men of Brass that Harry Mortimer used to run, and Harry did come down and do a few rehearsals with the band and a couple of concerts. So
were they based at the old car factory at Cowley?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was in Cowley, in Oxford.
Yeah.
So, it was really, really good. They had the old gas heaters above you and an ashtray in front of every stand, and they were still smoking those days in the band room. So it was good. But of course, those old bass cases didn't have wheels, so I had to carry it up and down the stairs as well, and then carry it all the way to the end of the car park. So I suppose that helps you chunk up a little bit doing that all the time. But yeah, it was good. And when Harry took the band, it was like he had a real aura about it.
He did.
It was incredible. When he was in front of the band, you didn't even realise it was happening. And it was the only other time I've ever experienced it was with Major Peter Parks. And just a real musical spirit almost. Like, it was fantastic.
Yeah.
I was going to ask Dean about in the early days. I mean, we all had sort of people we looked up to and stuff. I mean, was there big major influences on your thoughts and attitudes and everything from those days?
Oh, not really. I think I just loved playing, and the lad I sat next to was a guy called Richard Livery, who was also in the National Youth Band at the time. Right. So I ended up joining National Youth Band, and then I joined the same band that he was playing for. And basically, I just listened to everything he did, played the same volume as him, same dynamic, same intonation, same note length, everything. Just copied everything he did. And that's the best way to learn, really. And he was a really good player. And when I went to National Youth Band, we did one course together. He was number 1 and I was number 5. And but yeah, it was good, and it's good. It's good to start at the bottom. And
I remember Richard, Dean. He was in the youth band when I was there, and he was a good player.
Yeah, he had a little Hillman Imp. He used to put his bass on the back seat, his little tiny car. But he was a cracking player. So that was always very handy, and I think that's I think you need to sit next to good players to get better. And that's the hard part in Australia, that they don't have the history of players that we have in the UK. So to get better and to learn the craft of playing in a brass band, and especially bass playing, it's not so easy down here. You know, it's like there's lots of good players in the UK, and you can at some point get to play next to them and learn from them, and that's the best way to learn. Sit next to somebody, learn, emulate the sound, you know, everything about what they do, and then you can't go wrong. You know, and when it comes to balance and stuff like that, splitting parts, you know, it's all about listening really, and doing as you're told as well sometimes. So that's all.
So where did you go after Morris Motors then, Dean?
After Morris Motors, when I was 16, that's when I joined Desford. But it was a funny story. Yeah, there was a guy called Dominic Long. Not Dominic Long. What the hell do you call that? Forgot his second name. There was the two brothers. There was Dominic on the back row, and his brother played trombone. Glover, that's it. Yeah, Don Glover. So he was at National Youth Band. And he was playing at Desford on third cornet when he was 12.
That's
and he said to me, "I'm playing at Desford." I said, "No, you're not. Don't speak rubbish, mate." And he said, "Right, I'll bring my band uniform next National Youth Band course." So he brought it. I thought, well, it looks like you are in the band. And I said, right, then if you need a B-flat bass player, give me a call. And he did. He called me, and he gave me Howard Snell's number. So I phoned him up, and I was absolutely bricking it, because Howard at the time was a pretty serious guy, like, you know. And I told him my name, and I'd like to audition for the band, and I was friends with Dom. And then I had to put my dad on to get directions to get there, like, you know, because obviously I couldn't drive. And went for the audition, and that's where I met you, Grezzy. There was you, Steve Deed, Ken Ferguson, probably the horn player, Rob Fulcher, Chris Jeans, you know, and Snelly. They're all there in the room, which is like pretty daunting, really, when you go in. And,
am I right in remembering you played La Belle Americaine?
Yeah, played La Belle Americaine, and Hailstorm as well. The triple tongue bit.
I was sat there listening to all this, Sandy, and I was like, oh my God.
So was Howard Wagon then when you were doing this audition?
Yeah.
Right.
Howard was there. And of course, being 86, the Year of the Dragon was a piece, obviously, that they had won the Europeans on. I think that was earlier in the year, or 85, I think they won on that. And that was the sight reading, the last movement from Year of the Dragon. And I think I made a bit of a cock up of it, really. But to be honest, I've never ever played that without splitting it up, you know, to play it really loud. So it's quite funny, but it was good. I remember then going into the band room and having a drink afterwards, sort of thing. And then Grezzy said, "You'll be all right. You'll be all right. You'll be in, mate. Don't worry. You'll be all right." And then Howard said, "Yeah." Said I got in the band, and it was great, and never looked back. You know, and that was the thing, playing next to Grezzy. Again, exactly the same. You know, just did everything he told me, listened to everything he did, and then that's where you learn to play as a section as well. When, you know, because obviously Grezzy be doing all the pedaling and the low stuff, and you say, right, you need to ride me a lot more, you know, and then you understand how much you need to play, and then that's how important second B-flat bass player is. As far as all that stuff, you're only as good as your second B-flat bass player, because if they don't ride you, you're not going to sound any good. Nothing's going to balance. Nothing's going to work. So that was a real sort of eye opener, and also breathing in all the terrible places, you know, and that's how it is.
Yeah, it was interesting for me as a horn player, sat in front of you guys. It's interesting hearing you talk about how you work together and how you share things and do things and learn from each other and all that stuff. All the best bass sections I've sat in front of, I've always been like that. There's always a hell of a lot of sharing info and talking and sort of sorting yourselves out to make sure everything's covered. Like you say, all the breathing stuff and whose job is this and whose job is that. And yeah, it makes a hell of a difference, doesn't it, to getting a good section sorted out.
Yeah,
it does. It's a lot of hard work.
And you can't have any egos and stuff like that. It's like, you know, if you're in a band and then somebody thinks they're better than everybody else, and then nobody can tell them what to do, that's a terrible situation, you know. And I've only experienced it a couple of times, and mainly in Australia, to be honest. It's been a bit weird, you know, with some people. You can't tell me because, I think you should play it like this, because that's how we've always done it. No, disagree. I'm going to do it my way. Like, well, all right then. So yeah, it's some times like that. But sometimes you just got to be blunt, absolutely blunt, And yeah, but I've had it a few times in Australia, and it's unfortunate, but you learn to deal with those sorts of people.
1987 was mine and your first Nationals win.
It was, yeah.
Harmony Music. Unfortunately, Sandy was second that day.
Yeah, robbed.
I wanted to get that one in.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
you've got an incredible record, haven't you, at the Nationals?
Yeah. I think it was only 6 or 7 of us in Desford who won the 4 Nationals on the trot. And so they did the hat trick, and then you barred for a year, and then we came back and won it again, and went to Dyke, unfortunately. And I thought we played pretty well the next year as well. They might have got it again, but it wasn't to happen. That was the year Grimy won because of the minor strikes and stuff like that. So,
yeah.
But when I did go to Grimy, I did tell them that Desford should have won that day. I was giving some.
So how many Nationals have you actually won? Because didn't you do some more with Odens later?
Yeah, I won the Nationals with Fodens under Nick Childs, and then 2 with Grimy under Alan Withington. Yeah. No, those are good ones as well. Quite nice. So 7 altogether.
That's a lot. Wow.
So I mean, you mentioned a few names there of conductors and things. I mean, was there any of those guys that stuck out for whatever reason for being quite special at things?
Yeah, definitely. I think when I first joined Desford with Howard Snell, I think the music we played, all his arrangements were amazing. West Side Story, American in Paris, and Pines of Rome, and Procession of the Minster, but absolutely loads of great arrangements, and they were all handwritten parts, and which were sometimes hard to read. But he was a magnificent conductor, and conducting his own music as well. He was just next level. I mean, it was very scary, because you thought if you put a foot wrong that you might be out of the band, because it was real top level stuff and really hard work, and I was always pretty scared. And it was strange that after I left Desford and went to Phones and Howard was still there, he was a lot softer and a lot easier going. Maybe because I was older as well, but yeah, I remember it was some pretty strict stuff at Desford. It was, and I think he had to be. I think he was conducting a miners band, and there was a lot of coal miners there, and they're pretty tough guys, and he had to be pretty strict and pretty tough to bring them into line.
There's some big characters, weren't there? Some big. He really had to crack the whip with us because we were a little bit unruly, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
But it worked, and he was magnificent. It wasn't all the big pieces for me. It was some of the little ditties like T for Two and all that. It's so clever.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. And at the time, that's why Desford was successful, because of the music that he'd written and arranged. It was wonderful.
No, I mean, we when I was playing at Dyke, you were at Desford, and we didn't do the entertainment contest. Probably because we used to get invites all the time, and we'd always turn them down. And it was because we didn't have that in our armoury. We didn't have a Howard Snell to write all the music. But I always used to go to all of these, the ones at Warrington and the ones up in Brass in Concert and all that. And the sort of stuff Howard was doing was just so sophisticated. I would argue that probably the most sophisticated arranging that there's ever been done for bands was done by Howard. And the colours he used to get out of things as well. And yeah, it was just amazing to listen to.
I don't know whether you know
this. Very interesting.
I don't know whether you know this, Dean, but when I went to Desford, I was predominantly an E-flat player. And Howard had taken Brighouse on a tour, and I got to know him there. I was massively in awe of the guy, and I turned up to Desford for a listen, and they had a double B seat free. And at the time, they had a great player called Graham Tranter there, lovely player.
Yeah.
And he says, "Do you want to sit in on double B?" I went, "No, Howard." Anyway, I went again, and I'm sat there, and he says, "Come on, have a sit in." So I did. I picked this double B up. And then after it, I must have made an impression because he said, do you want to join the band? I says, no. I says, double B, I says, it's not as interesting as playing E flat. He says, I'll make your life interesting. Don't you worry about that.
Brilliant.
And he did.
Oh, yeah.
He was a fascinating character. He knew so much stuff. You know, you get talking about music with Howard, you could be there for hours.
Oh, yeah.
And he was mate used to he'd drive to bands, but then literally about 10 minutes away from the band, he'd pull into a car park somewhere and have like literally a 5 or 10 minute power nap, and they'd be recharged, and then boom, straight to band, and all on fire,
So, well, yeah, I mean, I was lucky enough. I think 84, I played with Foden's at Brass in Concert, helping out. And that was the first time I'd sort of seen Howard up close and, doing stuff. But I'd heard stories all the way through that time where when he did these arrangements, he would basically just photocopy. He wouldn't write parts out. He would photocopy the score, wouldn't he? And then
slice it up.
He would just scissors and cut out your part, so that if you ended up with like 16 bars rest, you had 16 separate bars rest. And then you came in and played your bit, and I remember speaking to players all the time saying it's a bloody nightmare, this, because they were all stuck on a sheet of paper,
and it was spider writing.
And you had to work out how many bars rest you had, counting individual bars, and then coming back in and playing it, and then such like, but he's a genius. Yeah,
I used to get some of the students that were all Northern. He'd get to photocopy the parts and cut them all out and stick it all back together again, And it's funny, a lot of the air from Sweet and D that he arranged, and it's a great arrangement and sort of thing. But the parts were like horrendous, like, and it was all, of course, it'd been photocopied lots, so it was quite faded. And it's funny when I've been playing with bands in Australia, and they'll say to me, "Have you played this piece before?" Like I said, yeah, a couple of times, like, with Howard Snell, like, in fact, that's my markings on there. It's been copied, like, from the original part.
That's scary when that happens. Yeah, that happened to me when I went back to Dyke for the second stint, and then there was music coming out that I'd written on sort of 25 years before, and you think, ooh, it's a bit scary, But there we go.
So when we were at Desford together, Dean, one night, right out of the blue, the chairman came in the room, didn't he, and said that Howard had left the band.
Yep.
I, for one, was absolutely devastated, and the search was on then for a conductor. They got the part of company with Howard and didn't have a plan. And so we ended up with the great Jeff Whittam.
Oh, yeah.
And he took us on Freedom, and that was quite enlightening. And he became a great friend of the band, didn't he, Jeff? And
he did.
But for the Nationals, they brought in James Watson. And Jim is an ex-principal cornet of Desford Colliery Band. And, you were saying about the Major having this aura about him. I think Jim has that as well. He's a very demanding personality, isn't he?
Oh, absolutely. And like you said with Snelly, how he had to be hard on a few people. I think I was a bit like that with Jim because I was a bit of a lad, and he gave me a hard time a lot of the time, but I suppose it was to keep me in my place, really, make sure I didn't get out of hand. And he was just fantastic. And I just always remember those fantastic moments when you'd be counting bars rest and you think, oh shit, was that 6 or 7? And all of a sudden, this big hand had come over and give you a cue, as if he knew that you weren't too sure. And he got this. He always said he got the safest hands in banding, and he had, he'd always give you a cue. And just very clear, because the bloke was about 6'6" or whatever. He looked even taller in front of the band with these dead long arms, and be conducting and be so clear and so meticulous.
I was going to say that he had not just the charisma, but he had the physical presence as well, didn't he?
Did.
He was a commanding
Huge
figure
guy
in front of the band. I remember last year when we had variations on an enigma for the areas, and I watched the performance. I think it's in Canada somewhere, live performance, and Jim's in front of the Desford band, and he does hardly anything. It's not for show. Let's put it that way. He's just conducting the music. It's not demonstrative or look at me sort of type of conducting.
No,
none of that. It was just purely the music, which that reminded me what he was like. When you've not seen someone conduct for a while, and then you suddenly see something like that, thinking, oh yeah, that's the way they used to do it. Totally
they do it. Absolutely.
Yeah. He was so musical, wasn't he?
Yeah. Oh,
he really had music in. It was pouring out of him. And now and again I'll put recordings of Jim playing, and the other day there was Share My Yoke I was listening to, and it was just oozing music. It's just stunning. A great fella, and because the band was so young then, Dean, I felt he galvanised all the youngsters in the band, and and he helped them along the way, and obviously kept discipline very tight. But he went on to have a great period, didn't he, with the band?
It was legendary, and I don't think he ever captured that with Dyke, because it was such a different situation. Like I said, the band was really young. I mean, like I was 16, you'd have been a few years older, Grezzy, and all around the band there was youngsters. But what he was good was he could make players better. So he'd have good players in the band, but he knew how to make them better. He was a brilliant teacher, he was a brilliant band trainer. So he would make you better. And he always said, I don't need to, he actually famously said, he was in the bands, but I don't need stars in my band. I mean, that's easy to say when you've got Meady and you got Marty Winter on top, and Jeansy on trombone and that, it's easy to say when you got a top band like that. But he was right. All those players in the band were better because of what Jim did. And he was a fantastic band trainer and teacher, and it was one of the bands, and everybody, we were all just really close mates. I mean, it was quite good that the band room was part of, basically got a bar and everything, and before and afterwards we'd have a few beers in the bar, and afterwards there was probably a core of 5 to 8 of us would stay quite late, because I only had to go to school the next day. And Fozzie used to take Fozzie didn't work, and he borrowed his mum's car. And remember Howard Chapman was behind the bar, and he said, "Oh, can you give me a hand, Dean?" Behind the bar, I was like, "Oh yeah, okay." So behind the bar, he said, "Would you mind helping out serve the beer?" And I went, "Yeah, no problem, no problem." Point the point, so he's like, "Oh, help yourself to a couple of beers if you like." I went, "Oh, thanks." So we always had plenty of beers to that. It was really good, and so the social side was good, and I think the amount of tours we did loads of European tours. Might have been a long weekend or a week, but of course when you're away, that's when you really get to know each other and get together, and everybody in the band would do anything for each other. There was no cliques. It was just everybody was having a great time all the time, do anything for you.
Jim, then one of the hallmarks I always thought with Jim was that he played quality music wherever he went. It was always top-notch stuff.
Yeah, he used to delve into the back catalogue as well.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. But he had mates who used to arrange for him, didn't he? He had some guys from Philip Jones Brass Ensemble. I think there was John Iveson arranged some stuff for him. There was Malcolm
Bennett. Malcolm Bennett.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
Arrangements for his. Yeah.
So some superb stuff. And
Colas Brugnon, the overture.
Superb.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Motor Perpetua was another that they did, and this was absolutely astounding music. So Jim sort of carried that on, like, so he couldn't personally do the arrangements that Howard would do, but he got people in to do that sort of stuff.
He did.
And like, he selected other music as well. And with Howard, he'd bring out that much new music. He'd bring some out on a Wednesday, and he'd be doing it on the Saturday for a concert.
Yeah.
So there's a huge turnover of music. So your sight reading was fantastic as well. Absolutely great sight reading, because you were playing new music all the time. And then Jim would be doing the same, bringing out new music. We didn't stick to the same program all year. We'd be playing different music all the time, and good quality music as well. So it was
Do you remember
Really,
he used to warm the band up before rehearsal on that slow section from Comedy?
Sure, yeah.
I used to
Oh,
love it.
and it was fantastic, and it broke my heart when when he went to Dyke. I went to St George's Hall for the first area that he did with them, and I went to the hotel where they were rehearsing, and I looked through the little security eye hole in the door, and it was like a fisheye lens. I could see the whole band and Jim there, and he started conducting from Comedy Overture. Get choked up, really choked up, really choked up, but. Yeah, it was one of those things, and I never saw Jim for ages, and we were pretty upset when he left for because we just loved having him at the band, and it was quite emotional, really. There's a lot. I remember saying to Budgie that how choked we were about him leaving the band and that, but he had to do what was right for him, and that was it, and I don't blame him for what he did. But then a couple of years later, I was at the Open, and I was walking downstairs. And he just on my own, and he was walking up on his own. He just put his giant hand out. I said, "You're right, Dean." I was like, "God, really choked up." It's good to see,
He had that effect on people.
Oh, definitely, definitely.
He really took ownership of bringing the young players through, and he was just inspirational. I think I know Sandy believes this too. His effect on banding needs reassessing because it was enormous.
Oh, huge.
It seems to get brushed under the carpet sometimes, but it was absolutely enormous.
Yeah.
Both his playing career and his conducting.
I mean, I know I did the first little bit with him at Dyke, and then a lot of things changed, etc., etc. But then when you look back at some of the stuff he did with Dyke, not just the contest stuff, but all that Ted Watson, Walton stuff, and the big projects and everything. He was bringing lots of good stuff to the band, and again, all based on quality music.
Yeah.
Dean, you mentioned once or twice there little things about tours and stuff, because I remember when we were at Grimy, tours were a big thing, and that was one of the. You seem to be at your most gregarious, most happy in tours and stuff. I mean, is there any particular tour memories that you remember?
I think so. I think the first, obviously, all the Desford ones were short ones, but I used to play with the Young Ambassadors brass band as well, and that was another level of banding it again. That it was made up of players from all the top bands in the country, and we'd travel down to Oxford to Frank Wolf's house and go into town, have a few beers, come back, have a few hours sleep in a chair in his house, and then we'd get the bus about 5:30 to the ferry, and then we'd start drinking on the bus, and on the ferry all the way over. We'd all get a crate of Stella each, and then get the other side, and short trip to where we were staying in Luxembourg or wherever, and do a rehearsal, and then you do your concert, and then they hand out all these little beer tokens, and that was just brilliant times, and of course you stop with families as well, and the first couple you might stop with a family, and they want to go to bed straight after the concert, but after that I made sure that we stopped with people who want to stay out late, and a couple of times me and Alan Hobbins stopped with the barman, so we would be on the bar, and so another late do, and then early mornings getting back on the bus and going somewhere. But those are great times. So the best tours were with Desford. We went to the USSR, when Russia, but when it was a real part of the Cold War, and it was really quite dodgy. But we opened the International Trade Centre there, and Cecil Parkinson was there, and we stopped in the Hotel Ukraine, which was this one of the only Western hotels there. And it was actually quite dangerous. I think we Fozzie and me waited for the percussion gear to come off, because the rest of the band went on one bus, and they were like the old yellow American school buses, and Fozzie and me loaded up the rest of the percussion, and we came afterwards, and we got to the hotel, and this fella comes out, and he's really drunk, and this copper just gets this huge truncheon out, starts whacking him, and so I said to Fozzie, I can't let that happen. I'll go over and help out. And so I starts walking over. Of course, I'm only like 18 or 19, quite stupid. And he then this van pulls up, and 8 guys jump out and throw this guy in the back of the truck and off they go. And I'm like, if I'd have gone over there, I'd probably be in a salt mine somewhere still, you know. So it's pretty dodgy. But we played at the Tchaikovsky Hall where the international piano competition is. We went and played at the military academy, and you know, we went to Red Square, and of course I unfortunately bought a lot of black market stuff in Red Square. I bought a big furry hat for my dad and a Russian hammer and sickle belt, and before you know it, the police are running around with guns and that, and apparently it's illegal to do that. So they took me to the police station, and I had to sign a document to say this guy had sold me the stuff, and I don't know what happened to him, but they let me off, and, and I got back in time for tea, but it was quite a scary time.
Wow.
But, yeah, getting arrested in Red Square, not my finest moment really, but you know, I sort of pleaded a bit ignorant. So the Russian one was good, and then the Desford tour, when we had a year off, we were barred for a year. We went to we flew to Chicago. I went throughout the Midwest and ended up in Toronto. We went to Niagara Falls and all that sort of stuff, and that's where I did that live in Canada.
Recording. I was just thinking that.
Which is just, and that was after 10 days of you know, traveling, quite a lot of traveling every day, and concert every night. So the band was exhausted, but they were on fire, you know, absolutely on fire on that, and did a super job. So that was good. And years later, I went on after I'd left Desford, and I was probably playing at Foden's, and Desford did another tour, and I went along and helped out, and it was to Lake Placid, and the Royal Academy of Music were there. I don't know if they were band in residence or the Desford band was, and Eric Crease was conducting, and John Wallace was there, and Ifor James, and it was just an amazing time in the middle of nowhere. But in good old fashioned Desford, we got to New York, and we played with Foden's at the Cambridge, so we had to leave a day later, and there was only 5 of us. So he said, "Don't worry, there'll be a hire car for you." It's about 8 hours drive to up New York State, in the middle of the forest, but you'll be all right. So we got there at midnight, and said, "Where's the? Have you got a hire car for us?" And I said, "Oh no, man, no car. I don't know what you mean." So he picked up a courtesy phone, called a few people. "Yeah, no hire car for you." He said, "You can get the Greyhound bus that leaves at 5:30 in the morning, but you'll have to queue now to get on the bus."
Nice.
I was like, "Jesus, that's a nightmare." So then this fella comes and he says, "I've been thinking, between the 5 of you could probably get a taxi all the way for the same price." So we booked a taxi, and the taxi driver looked like Lou Diamond Phillips, and we got in, and off we go. And I was in the front seat with him. He weren't very talkative. Anyway, 8 hours later, it's daylight, and we're in the middle of the forest, and I saw this sign, and it said, "Rocks falling out onto the road, be careful." And I said, "Bloody hell, there's a lot of dangerous stuff around here, rocks and all sorts." And then I saw this next sign was a deer jumping out of the woods. I said, "Hey, wouldn't it be funny if before I'd even say deer jumping out of the woods, a deer jumped out on the bonnet of the car, smashed the windscreen, got dragged down the car, and then hopped back into the woods?" And I was like, "This is mental." The bloke didn't even stop, right? So he gets to Lake Placid, and he said, "Where are you guys stopping?" And I said, "We don't know." So he dropped us at the Holiday Inn, and I said, "Do you have 28 English guys stopping in?" He said, "No, man, no. I'll phone my mates up." Sorry about me pretending to make an accent, but so I'll phone a few of my mates up around at the other hotels. He tried the Four Seasons, the Hilton, all these posh hotels. I said, "Hey, mate, we won't be stopping in one of them. What's the worst hotel in Lake Placid?" He said, "Do you have 28 Englishmen staying at your hotel?" "You do." So he gave us a lift down there, but it was a fantastic sort of week away, and on speedboats on Lake Placid. And Roger Bobo came to one of the concerts because he was there, and he came and had a chat with us. And it was fantastic, fantastic time at Lake Placid. So that the Desford, so that was pretty good. Another one was with Foden's. We went to Finland, and that was, again, we was playing at a wine festival, so that was quite a good time. We ended up playing in a cave to do a concert, and then the next day we went for a sauna in the woods. So we got on this boat, and it pulls in at the side of the river, and we all hop off. And they got this sauna, and so a few of us got in there and having a beer in the sauna, and it was a wood-fired sauna, and it was pretty hot. And then when you'd had enough in there, you jump in the river to cool off and that. So we're all diving in the river and that to cool off. So Finland was a pretty crazy place, because it didn't really get dark, you know. So you 3 o'clock in the morning, it's still daylight really. And the Finns are a peculiar sort. They like to have a fight and have had a few drinks, but it's not like proper fighting like in the UK. It's like they're almost like handbags at dawn, like slapping around and rolling around on the floor. And I actually witnessed it firsthand with a couple of guys, and they started uber, and then it grabbed him and rolling around on the floor, like slapping each other. Very strange. Very strange. But Finland was good. But I think the tours that Sandy's alluded to, the Australia and New Zealand tours, which were, they were fantastic trips, because it's a long way. It's a long way to go. And the first one I sat next to a lad called Tafarel, and he was a super lad. But we obviously you got to get your free drinking on the way there, so you've got to max that out. So he was having a good drink, and then after about 9 hours, he fell asleep, and he woke up, and I could see he weren't very well. So I always have the sick bag ready just in case. So I saw sick bag round, and but the hostie came round, and it was great. It was like it was happened every day. Just picked up the sick bag, walked off, brought another one, and brought him a cold drink, and it was all fine. But the trips around Australia, and it's fantastic. 17 years later, and I still talk to people that say, "Oh yeah, I went to a Grand Thump concert. I think it was 2001." I'm like, "Yeah, I was playing. Yeah, it was great."
Yeah.
You know, so all those years ago. But we went to again. All the concerts were brilliant. There was always a couple of beers backstage at the interval, and a couple of beers afterwards. And luckily, I think the percussionist didn't drink, and so we got their share, and it was good. And then we played at the Opera House. You know, it doesn't get any better. You know, it's in the Opera House.
Brilliant.
Amazing.
Am I right in thinking that's where you met Julie?
No, I met Jules in Christchurch in New Zealand because I was playing with Waitakere, and who Gary Cutt was conducting. So I played with Waitakere and every in Auckland, but the contest was in Christchurch. So we flew down 4 days before the contest, and I just literally bumped into Jules there, and she was a tuba player, and you know we stayed in touch over the years, and then I eventually invited her on a Desford tour of Asia, and so we actually got together the first time in Jakarta, which is not a great place to be honest, and it was there was a coup going on at the time when we were there, and armed guards taking the bus to the school to do a concert, and big iron gate, big metal gates and more guys with machine guns. So I met her there, and then literally after getting together on that tour with Desford, we got together a bit later in the year. I came down to do a Stars in Brass in Brisbane, and when Jules came up for the Open and Nationals, and and stayed for a month, and you know we went all over, and then I came over at the end of the year on Christmas Day. So
excellent. That was obviously a big move for you, Dean. But prior to that, you'd been playing with what I call the best Grimethorpe band in a long, long time. They'd managed to put a band together. It was just fantastic. And your partner then was an old friend of mine too, Tiny.
Yeah,
Gary Proctor. He's a great player, Gary. And what a noise. I mean, you had Sean and was it Richard Wilton on E-flat?
Wilson, yeah. Sean and Richard Wilton, yeah.
What a noise you used to make there. It was fantastic.
It was a great time, and like all around the band, like we obviously got Sandy there, you know, and you know there's Richard Marsh and then Roger Webster. So it was a great band all round. And
one of the recordings I was, in fact, Simon, I think you and I judged at the Grand Shield weekend, Life Divine. Yeah. A couple of years ago, can't remember exactly when, and I dug that recording out. It's Mr. Howarth conducted Life Divine. Yeah. Deary me, it's frightening.
We were judging the bottom section, weren't we, at Blackpool?
Yeah.
And I said to Sandy, I'm going to have to stop listening to this because I don't think we'll hear anything quite anywhere near.
Yeah, it was the right band for that piece, massive. That band could blow forever, and it was just, and not loud, it was just big,
huge,
sonorous. And, that's fantastic recording that with Mr. Howard. Yeah.
Yes, it's got to be, for me, the best one.
There's one thing I want to do with this podcast that this is too good an opportunity to not take, is to let you two guys explain to people your thoughts on B-flat bass playing and the dark arts of B-flat bass playing. Because I know, Simon, you said when we were planning this to get Dino on, saying, well, we have slightly different approaches. Well, I'd like to hear just what your thoughts on it and just any tips you've got for people that are, because there is a huge difference, isn't there, between E-flat bass and B-flat bass?
Oh, yeah.
Which a lot of people might not, really realise. Go on, just explain a little bit about your thoughts on it.
Double B playing for me, Dino, is so far removed from playing an E-flat. It's unreal. It's you can't swap between the two willy-nilly. It's just a completely different way of using your airstreams and everything. But when I say that me and Dean have got different approaches, it's hard to gauge that really, because we sat together on Fraternity, didn't we, Dean?
Yeah.
We had a great time, and we'd not. It was the first time me and Dean had sat together since 1987, and we never said a word to each other.
Yeah.
Because we understood each other's playing to the nth degree.
Yeah.
And we never, there wasn't one word said in disagreement or instruction or anything. We just got on with it. Dean alluded to it earlier. You're only as good as your partner.
Sorry, just explain to me a bit about this first and second bass, B-flat bass or E-flat, because in other parts of the band, so example, euphonium, right? Your first euphonium, your solo euphonium would take all the high stuff. Second euphonium would be filling in elsewhere. How does it work in the bass end? Because does first B-flat bass do all the low stuff, or does the second player do that? Or go on, explain.
I think normally in bands, I think that's the way it goes. Is the first player gets to do all the low stuff, the pedals,
the low stuff, right?
Yeah, but if there's solos as well that might go quite high, normally do that as well. Unless the second B-flat's good at that sort of stuff, and you can hand that over. Then, right. As I get older, much rather hand that over if somebody can play it better.
It's always been a slight mystery to me, in as much as it's like a dark art. The you four behind where I sit, we're always sort of colluding together to sort things out in a sort of in a little club sort of thing. You sort of did your own thing and leave us to we can sort ourselves out sort of thing.
Yeah,
it was always a slight mystery, and I think you guys liked the fact that it was all a bit of a mystery to the likes of us.
I remember when I was with Derek. I remember one particular rehearsal. Major Parks asked us to play a chord on his own, and he says, "No, I don't want any pedalling." And me and Derek looked at each other. We're not pedalling. It's when you match them sounds so well, it seems to create an added depth to it.
It'll resonate.
And I had a pretty tough time with Derek, to be honest, because he wasn't one for telling you what you were doing wrong. He used to want me to think about what I was doing wrong. And I hope my mum forgives me. I'm going to tell you a story now. I used to live at home when I was in my early days at Black Dyke, and you get out of your bed and you run to the bathroom, and I just had my underwear on, and my mum noticed my left leg was all bruised, and she says, "What's that? What have you done?" I says, "Oh, it's just Derek." it's just Derek. He used to whack me. And then I'd
Really?
go, what? He'd say, think. And he used to make me think about what I'd done. And, you know, it's little things, but Derek instilled in me the fact that there's only one guy doing the low stuff. When Derek, because he'd gone and came back to Dyke, he said to me, he says, right, I'll do all the low stuff. He says, because that's my job, and you don't ever touch anything unless it's written. And I went, okay, deal, no problem. And I tell you what an education it was, listening to him, the way he could do it. And he had, as a kid, I used to go up to Black Dyke and listen, sit behind. Even though I was an E-flat player, I was transfixed with what Derek was doing. And I used to be, because Sandy will remember, you used to be able to sit at the back and you could follow the music.
Yeah, you could.
It was that close.
Yeah, the room was so small.
Yeah, and so I used to follow Derek's music and then suss out that he were peddling in places that weren't written. And I was like, how's, you know, being naive, how's all this work? So I was on a National Youth Band course and Roy Newsom was the guest conductor. And of course, Roy knew Derek well, and I kept telling him, I said, you know, what's your feelings about when Derek puts the octave down? And, you know, and he says, well, as long as it in, you know, too often, he says, I said, well, how do I learn? I've asked Derek how to do it. And he says, oh, Derek won't tell you. He says, he keeps his cards close to his chest. You'll only ever learn by listening to him. He says, but I'll give you a tip. He says, go to York Minster. There's a great organist there. I can't remember his name. He gave me all the times that he were on. He says, go sit there and immerse yourself in what is going on. So I did this. And one week they were doing, I can't remember the piece, but they were doing a piece that the following week the band were playing.
Right.
And again, I'm sat at the back of the band. Lo and behold, Derek dropped the pedal in exactly where the organist did. And I thought, got it. So I was hooked on going over to York, listening to this. And one thing I noticed about Derek, he'd never forced the issue. He used to just lay there and never powered it through. He'd just lay there. And he used to say to me, if you're going to power it through, you're going to hear it. He says, whereas if you just linger lower, you'll feel it. And he says it would be like a fog coming off the stage. And so in my early days, I used to give it some blooming welly down there, but I started backing off a bit. And I thought, he's got something here. This is right. And, you know, but again, Dean, it's like, it's sitting next. I was so lucky. I sat next to you. You were a young kid, but I did learn things off you. And then he sat next to a legend like Derek, and every flipping time was a lesson. He never said out, but it were a lesson. And you just sit there soaking it up.
Yeah, I think with Jacko as well. What he did, he took stuff down that I would never have even thought of doing. You know. Yeah. And for me, the classic one is in Cloudcatcher Files. Yeah. And there's a bit in that where you go, ooh, do, 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 do. That's a pedal beat. Yeah. And it's absolutely, it's incredible. And when you hear it, I remember sitting in Lucerne at the Europeans and went in to listen, and they were playing that. And it was, man, I never heard a sound like it. Like I was completely blown away. There was no sound like that. It was incredible. And I played a couple of concerts when Derek was at Fairies, and it was funny because it was lovely. I mean, he was an old fella, and he sat me down, took me through the pad of music, talking about any awkward bits, what to do here and there. Like, it was really nice. And then Crowther said, "Oh, Derek's getting all right with you there, isn't he? He's smiling at you a lot, isn't he? Like, you know." I said, "Yeah, he's a really nice bloke." Like, you know. He said, "Yeah, no, that means he don't like you." This is Crowther. That means he don't like you. Oh, he hates you, Dean. He hates you. Say that.
He used to say to me, he was smiling, and we'd make a bit of a crack about it. He said, "I've had my happy pill."
Is that right?
Yeah.
Sandy will testify to this. He was one of the. He was a genial fella. He was quite blunt in some of the things he said, but he was absolutely one. He became my second dad because I lost my dad very early,
Right.
and he sort of took over, bringing me up basically, and and if ever I'd done something silly, he was the one getting me in a corner and telling me off, and and he were very forceful with it, and funny at the same time. He used to come out with the odd wisecracks, but so lucky there. But when you and Tiny got together, something gelled there, didn't it?
Yeah. I think I've never heard him breathe, and there was never a gap. It was like unbelievable, and such a massive player, and always played in tune, always played in time, always balanced, always did everything. It just worked really, really well. When I think about it now, it was absolutely brilliant, and like crowd on the other side, like it was absolutely shit or bust. It was like absolutely go as hard as he could, on some of those loud things, and you could feel it. It was probably 5% away from losing it, like, but he just went for everything, and I like that as well. You can't hold back, and it just added into everything.
One of my pet hates is composers writing E-flat tubas on the same pedal note as a double B.
Yeah,
I just
absolutely.
cannot stand the overtones you get from it, and the lack of intonation. It causes intonation problems. I always rewrite them. How do you feel about that, Dean?
Absolutely, we do it all the time. Like even in the New Zealand Nationals recently, there's loads of E-flat bass parts really low, and then some of the B-flat bass parts are really high. So why would you do that? It doesn't make any sense. You swap them around, you get far better sound. Nobody's going to know. Well, the artist is going to sound better. And and the other thing is sometimes E-flat bass players just putting pedals in as well. And it's like, it just don't work. It don't work. And it's like, so doing that, don't be doing that. That's not.
They get very short shrift from me if they do.
Yeah.
I can see you two looking at each other here, sort of going, "Oh, no, don't be doing that."
Absolutely.
E-flat players.
But go through.
It's all about concentrating on the core sound for me. I mean, you can get as quiet. You can get very quiet on a double B, and it's lovely when it's laying on a carpet. But it's the louder stuff. You've got to keep control of it. You don't need to be absolutely busting the sides of the hall to make an impact. If you take a 5% off, suddenly it'll spread. Another pet hate of mine, Dean, is, and now I know you play on a big mouthpiece, but you've got really fit chops. I've never played on a big mouthpiece. I always play on a 24 AW. And I do that because I can control it. Now, you hear such a lot of double B players, they're on a massive mouthpiece, and when they go low, they sound like a tractor with a flat tyre to me.
Absolutely. And a few people have asked me about what sort of mouthpieces to play on, and you need to have a Guernsey at what the chops are like, because the bigger the mouthpiece, the bigger the embouchure, and the more strength you need to have in your embouchure, which means you need to practice a lot to be able to control that airflow. And that's what it's all about. It's controlling that airflow. So if you're putting a huge amount of air through, it's going to be flapping around, and it ain't going to be, it ain't going to be working. The other thing with a big mouthpiece is, like you say, you get it's almost like a bass trombone pedal, and that's not what you want. You want a velvety sound, and that's in tune, and you're going to hear the overtones. As soon as you start pushing too much through there with a big mouthpiece, it makes it easier to get pedals, but it makes it harder to control them. So that's the problem with that. If you've got a big mouthpiece and you're not on your money, that's not going to work very well. And that's why you're probably better with a more medium mouthpiece, unless you've got chops that can handle it, or unless you're going to do a lot of practice, to keep in. And I started. It was funny. The first mouthpiece I had was a Boozy Knox prototype mouthpiece, which was in the case for this first Besson I had. And then I handed that back when I left. Always very honest. I should have kept it now, but handed that back. And then Ken Ferguson gave me a 2L, a Wick 2L, that was all right, but that's quite a sharp face on that sometimes, and you can get a bit of too much grunt on it. So then I went on the 24AW for a bit, and then Ken Ferguson found in his bottom drawer a Bach 7, and I got on really well with that. You know, it just worked for me, an absolute treat. And I played on that for quite some years until I think Andy Katanak, he's always been instrumental on trying different mouthpieces and instruments and stuff, and he got this Mike Finn mouthpiece. So I emailed Mike Finn and said, I'd like to try mouthpieces. And he sent a couple over, and it was a Mike Finn 3, and it worked a treat. It was like absolutely brilliant. So I went on to that for all those years, you know, on the 7, but I did keep my eye out because the Mount Vernon Bach mouthpieces are supposed to be better, especially I think Jacko used to have a Mount Vernon.
He did.
It was a little bit bigger, yeah. So I got a Mount Vernon 7, and it was in really good nick actually. And part of me thinks, I'd quite like to go back on that one day. But now again, Andy Katanak's gone on the Mercer and Barker. And they sent some for me to try, and they were good, but they just weren't quite ready. And then Andy did a bit more work, and you know, then they were really good. So I've got a nice Mercer Barker rose gold, and but it's a lovely mouthpiece. It just works for me. But I think it's like a personal thing, isn't it, Grezzy? But I think I would definitely steer away from getting bucket mouthpieces. These huge cheeks. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I've heard it. It's almost like a vibrato, almost out of control vibrato or a tearing noise, you know. Yeah, it's going to be definitely hard to do that. And like I think that it is. You like you say, you're only as good as the amount you practice, you know. And that's why Jacko was so good, because he practiced every day for hours on end.
Yeah,
you know? And that's why he could pump so much through, because he's I'm sure strong enough. So
you know, every picture in Black Dyke's band room had a certain rattle, and he used to be able to play right up the scale chromatically and find it. If he'd say, right, go to that one over there, and you'd have a listen, he'd play C sharp, sure enough it'd rattle, and then you'd go to other one on a D, oh no, the D's over there, and he'd worked all this out.
Yeah, one pictures on the wall. Yeah
one day
rattled.
He says, right, I want you to play a D, I want you to get that picture to rattle. Play a D. Nah. I kid you not, we went for a good hour, and he went, right, you've got it. Now, we're not moving off till you've done it 20 times.
Really?
And then we moved to another one. And he went like this with me. And his idea was focusing that sound so that it would work within the band. You know, and once I did it, it made you think about what noise you're producing on every single note. There's no point just rattling through it, he said. Just think about every single note you play. You know, and it stood me in good stead, did that. But little things you learn off so many different people.
Definitely. Definitely. The big thing as well for me was I played with brass band at Battle Creek, and before I went, I had a word with Sean Crowther and said, "Can I have a lesson, please?" And it was like, "Why?" I went, "Well, I'd like to have a lesson, you know, because I need to be as good as I can be, because this is like a top band, brass band at Battle Creek. So I don't want to go over there and not be as good as I can be." So he gave me a lesson. And for a few things that he taught me straight away, he said, "Can you do a buzz, make your lips buzz?" I went, I couldn't do it, you know. So he said, I'm not too sure whether it actually transpires. It actually makes any difference once the mouthpiece on your lips. But what it does, it helps you set your embouchure. And Dan Thomas has done a webcast about this, and actually, when you actually make that buzzing sound, you set your embouchure perfectly. So you do that, and then when you actually blow through the instrument, you got Arnold Jacobs has this piece of equipment, and it's like from a hospital, and it's got a ball at the bottom, and then you've got to blow through it and keep the ball up. So you do it, you blow through it, you can keep the ball up. Put your mouthpiece in and buzz through it, ball doesn't go anywhere because you're not pushing the air through. So you need to. It helps you visualize it. So you push the air through while you're buzzing, keep the ball up. So then, and you think, all these years I've probably not been pushing that air through like that, you know. While you're making your lips vibrate. So if your lips are vibrating effectively, you're pushing the air through straight away, everything's going to work better. It's going to be amplified by the instrument, and the harder you work, the better quality sound you're going to have. And we've been lucky as well. A couple of times we went up to old Brendan got us up to the to Catterick, to the army band up there, and Jules Knight did a little masterclass with the basses up there. And there's a couple of things I always do. When I first started playing, I always put a cushion down my bell to get some restriction there. And I'd probably do 20 minutes of that, because then you start getting dizzy. But just playing really long notes, chromatically going up and down. With that in there, so when you take it out, you don't put the same amount of air through, you put it through slower. But the sound changes. It's amazing. And I think you have to do that to build up, have that resistance there, so you work harder, because you can't normally, it's never the same playing at home as it is in a brass band. So you build up that resistance. So we do a bit of mute practice with the guys. And the other thing is, when you're warming up, is to do hymn tunes and just play it on the mouthpiece. Just buzz it on the mouthpiece, your parts. Because you haven't got that resistance, so you have to put loads more air through. So when you put in the instrument, you're using a load more air straight away naturally, and it's a better sound. So there's these things. If you do these things a lot, your bass playing is going to improve. But the other thing with bass playing is, especially in the B flats, is that intonation thing. And they are wieldy beasts, and there are 2 or 3 notes which you have to use alternate fingering for, and you need to know what those are and when you do it and all that sort of stuff, and just listen all the time. Whereas at Desford, I was lucky, subconsciously played in tune because everybody else was in tune, so you just knew that's where it was. Never a problem. And most bands I've played for, that's why sometimes when you play for a low section band, sometimes it's quite hard if they're not locked into that intonation. Then it's just not so easy. And then it's, do you play at 440 or 442? Like, we down here in Brisbane, or in Australia rather, we tried to play at 440. But there's a lot of bands at 442 and higher. And it's like, wow, it's getting hard. And it does give a bright sound sometimes, and but it's not in tune. It's not the right intonation. I think they're not the right pitch for that, and that's pretty controversial. And if you go back to orchestras years ago, and that they were very different. They were actually very sharp. They were 445 and stuff. So the sort of brass band, whatever we want to go with, but you all need to be playing the same. So it's all right when you're playing at home with your tuner out, but you need to make sure that you've got that. You're all tuning to 440 or 442. And the other funny thing is, like, I've had bass players saying, "Oh, I'm a machine. I've got my tuner on my bell, and I'm always playing tune." And I'm like, "You're only as in tune as the bloke that plays before you. So if somebody's playing for you to playing, and then you come in afterwards, and you don't play in tune with them, don't matter. You're out of tune, not them.
Yeah,
that's the way it goes. That's
absolutely
the way it goes. So all of them, and that's, it's all about team playing, isn't it? Sort of all that sort of stuff. But big believer on that. And because I live in an apartment, so I have to use a Schlipf practice mute. So I use that a lot. I do a little bit of blowing with that, and then I use that. So then it's only really when I can go to one of my stepsons has got a recording studio in his house, in his garage, which is good. So Jules and I pop over there and open up a little bit, which is good. But in the apartment, I have to use the mute. But the difference when you take it out again, it's amazing. But you can't beat playing in band. You can't beat playing in band and really giving it some welly. And we've not played regularly in bands for probably 4 years now. Well, actually longer, probably about 8 or 10. So we play in project bands down in Australia. So we play with Sydney City Brass down in Sydney, and we get together, say, 4 weekends before a contest. But you don't just turn up and do a few hours. You'll do 8 hours on Saturday and 8 hours on Sunday, and it's real graft. So you're doing equivalent of 8 weeks of practice, in a couple of weekends. So that's why we do it. So it's hard to get your chops back in to do that each time. So when we're back here, we have to keep topping up the practice every night if we can, just to keep the lips in fine fettle for when you do up the amount you're going to be doing. So that's what we do a bit. And then I've used to. Well, I've not been back to England to play at the Nationals for a few years, unfortunately. I'm not sure if it was the last time I played with you, Grezzy, because we had COVID and stuff like that. And now my mate Lawrence Eccleston's gone back to Desford, so there's not really a spot for me there. So, so that was always quite good going back and playing at the Open or the Nationals. And I think the Open, they've just changed the rules. You have to be a resident to play. So that's not really helping anybody, really. I'm a UK citizen because I choose to live abroad, that I can't play at the Open now. So it's pretty rough, that.
Dino, that's been fantastic. Lovely insights into your career. And when I said legendary at the beginning, I meant it. You've been an absolute credit to your instrument. And, you know, me and Sandy have always enjoyed your playing. So many thanks for joining us on Smith and Grezzy. And we'd love to have you on again sometime.
Well, anytime, Grezzy. Really enjoyed it, mate. And coming from you and Sandy, that means a lot, mate. So thanks very much. You've always been an inspiration.
No problem. Thanks, mate.
Guys.
That's it this week from Smith and Grezzy. So if you want to join us in a couple of weeks, we'll have another topic, I'm sure, or another banding personality. So until then,